So there we are. I guess we're live, aren't we?
We are. Thanks
good morning,
for joining.
and welcome to another exciting episode of Sales TV. Well, I say exciting episode for us. But we always try to make this a safe place for salespeople, a bit of fun, the home of sales, and all of those other things that we say about it. And we're just here for what is it they say? Here for a good time, not a long time.
Yeah, we're here for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, when we were discussing this yesterday, we thought a good thing to talk about would be soft close, hard close. It sounds like that's like big fish, little fish type of thing, doesn't it? Soft close, hard close, which is more effective in the long run, and which is better. So before we get into the meat of that, let's introduce ourselves. Alex.
Good morning. My name's Alex. Glad to be here.
Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite and famous for writing the book Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
And I'm Adam. I'm Tim's business partner, co-founder of DLA Ignite, and well, there's only three of us, so it's like host doesn't seem like the right thing to. I'm kind of the first one to speak on this event today. So there we go. That question, soft or hard close, which wins more deals in the long run? Which is the right thing to do? I mean, I think we've all got an opinion on this, haven't we? So who'd like to kick off with their thoughts on this?
Well, I'm happy to share a story because there could be a third, So I used to work with a guy that I would say was the enthusiastic close. And so every meeting, every engagement he had with the client would be full of kind of this overzealous, enthusiastic, I'm gonna talk you into submission and we're gonna have loads of fun. And sometimes it worked really well because he carried the buyer along on the journey. But there were other occasions where it didn't work so well, and it really kind of rubbed the customer up the wrong way, should we say?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think then that qualified them out?
Well.
And he was never going to sell to them in the first place?
No, I don't. I mean, maybe there could be, maybe there was an occasion or could have been an occasion where that happened, but I am privy of an occasion where that definitely wasn't the case, and the feedback from the customer.
Get him off my side.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think that one of the issues is if you have got a product or service which is demonstrably better than the competition, then in many ways normal rules don't apply, do they? So if you've got a product which is competitive, then the buyer has choice. If you have a product which is better, then actually the buyer has limited choice. If you can show that what you've got is a better solution, then in many ways the customer doesn't, and it has to be better, not better in your opinion. It has to be better, and maybe then that enthusiastic close is okay. You get really excited about your product and how fantastic it is, and the buyer goes, "Yeah, I'm up for this."
Yeah. I think I agree and I disagree, because even though your product might be better, you have to almost prove the value in order to successfully close the deal. And often with better products, they're more expensive or better solutions, let's say, they're more expensive than the rest, and so you have to work harder at building that value and defining the value quite early on, in order to get to a point where you can actually close the deal and it's not lost to indecision, let's say.
So Alex, what in terms of a sales process, it's a bit of a loaded question, but I'm guessing you're of the opinion that every meeting should have some sort of next action.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly of the opinion that every meeting should have a value exchange.
Yeah.
That then encourages that next action, so that it's not forced per se.
And what's the value exchange? Because a Rolls Royce is value, but a plastic bag is value.
Yeah, I think you have to think about the individual. So it might be as simple as you've taken the time to get to know them, listen to them, and therefore they feel like it's been a valuable experience spending time with you. You may not have talked about anything to do with your product and the product value.
Now, I know that there was. I was once told by a salesperson that they saw a sale very much about holding a ball. And what happened during the sale was basically this ball was passed between the salesperson and the prospect. And what you needed to do as a salesperson was always make sure the ball was in the prospect's hands rather than your hands.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something that you think of, or?
Yeah, I like that analogy. I've not heard that one before. Yeah, certainly when you feel like the prospect is moving the ball forward, if we continue that analogy into a game of football or American football, if you feel like the client, the customer, the buyer is moving the ball forward, your job is being done. I guess you want to be part of that play though, as the salesperson.
Because if you think about quite often in sales processes that we've been on, there's probably been some form of demonstration. The demonstration actually is where the prospect passes the ball to the salesperson, because it's their job to basically go and organize that.
Yeah.
And so what happens is at that point is that you lose control, or you're losing. If we take control as a metaphor for closing through the sale, then in effect, when that's been passed to you, you lose control because you have to go away and sort something.
Yeah.
Unless you say, "Can you give me some demo data?" At which point you've passed it back.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. I like that analogy. Yeah. Or you say, well, is a demo the right thing? Most companies that I speak to think they want to see a demo, but by seeing a demo, it kind of restricts the way that they think about solving their problem. Because the software
it does become very features based, the conversation then, doesn't it? Let me show you another thing. And one of the things that we know is that the customer's not often in the same place that you are. So the thing that you think is really amazing, the customer often doesn't understand or care about. And the danger is that you go off down one of these flights of fancy, don't you, where you're showing all of these things that you think are wonderful and the customer has no interest at all in them.
Yeah. Yeah. As we were leading up to this call this morning, I was thinking about soft close versus hard close, and I was thinking about the fact that closing a sale is never one activity. It's not like, right, we're ready to close, even though most sales processes will have closing at the end of the sales process. I think there's so many different activities that need to be done. If done well, increase your chances of closing that piece of business. And therefore, if I understand the definition of soft close versus hard close,
what is your definition? I think that's a really good point to have a quick minute or so on.
Well, they're not my terms, but when I hear them, what I think about is, well, a hard close is when you're perhaps more persuasive. You know, you're a little more pushy. Whereas a soft close is you're closing the deal, but it's perhaps more strategic. It's more buyer-centric. The buyer feels like they're closing the deal rather than the seller. That's in my mind. Be interesting to hear your perception.
My view is that soft closing probably is more about empowerment. And hard closing is what you probably read about in books, where you go, you said at the beginning of this sale, your buying criteria was X, Y, and Z. We meet X, Y, and Z. Why are you buying type conversation?
Mm. Yeah. I always think that a soft close is where you're not closing, like you said, Alex, where they close. You know, where you don't sell, they buy.
Yeah.
I always find that a very pleasurable experience. You know, whenever anyone says hard close, I get this mental image of Glengarry Glen Ross. You know, coffee is for closers. This whole kind of would you like one or two of those? You know, would you like us to install this on Monday or Thursday? You know, that's very kind of closing off exit routes for the buyer. And I think that given the current climate, and I don't mean the economic climate, but I mean the kind of existential climate that we're in, we've already seen over the last couple of years, or few years, seen a whole host of mis-selling scandals. You know, we've seen it with PPE, we've seen it with diesel cars, we've seen it with investments, we've seen it with property. And I can't help thinking that if I, as a salesperson, make you buy something that is either not right or something that you don't want to buy, there is going to be at some point that coming home to roost.
Yeah.
So you guys had a way of selling stuff that was really obnoxious and disempowered the buyer and forced the buyer to buy something they didn't want to buy, like the old classic kind of encyclopedia salesman or Kirby vacuum cleaner salesman, to pick one as a joke. But you know, that whole idea where basically you put your foot in the door and you don't let somebody get away. And I think actually that there are going to be a whole host of problems around that in the coming months and years.
Yeah, I'd like to think that doesn't happen so much anymore, but I know, I mean, I've witnessed it, you know, in the various environments that I've been in. Never practiced it because as a sales leader, I've always put the afters at the front of my mind. So, you know, what is that path to value for success for the customer following signature? And felt accountable as a sales leader to work with the customer success team to ensure that the baton's handed over smoothly and the customer is on the path to realizing that value. But there are many, many examples that I've kind of witnessed in other teams where, you know, something has been sold. I don't know if missold is the appropriate term, but you know, the commission is so important to the individual. By hook or by crook, they're going to get pen to paper.
Yeah.
And then there's a train wreck for the customer success team to clean up. And they're off. The salesperson's off. And I don't agree with that.
No.
It also, in the examples you rattled off, Adam, it also depends on buyer mode. So the mode that the buyer's in. So buyers basically will be in will be in a position where some of them will be, they don't mind it, so it's often called even keel, where things are going long. Others are in growth mode, and it's a buyer that's in growth mode that you're looking for. But some buyers are basically desperate. For example, you're in the middle of a pandemic. There's no PPE, so what do? You just go out and buy whatever's there.
Yeah.
And of course, what happens is you buy the wrong stuff. And so quite often what happens is that you can be in that buyer mode in business where you're in, where we've been in a situation just in the last few months where an organization came to us where they had no pipeline and the leader basically was going to get fired unless he did something about it. And what we've done is that we've sorted out pipeline for him. But he was actually in desperation mode. And we did that. We transacted that deal at a big ERP vendor in a week.
Yeah.
but purely because of the particular buyer mode was desperation.
Yeah, they were very motivated, weren't they?
And we were talking to basically the decision maker and the person that signed the check, which is the optimum that you can have in any sale. Sorry, Alex.
Sorry, guys. I'm receiving messages that there's an error when trying to join the live. Do we see anything on the back end? Jordan's managed to get on through my profile, but someone's just messaging me saying there's an error on the page.
So I've looked at. Oh yeah. So you can look at your profile. So your profile, Alex, has 6 viewers at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my profile and there isn't any.
And it won't let.
And it won't let you watch.
Yeah, Jordan's watching it through my profile, but it won't let him comment.
Yeah, so I'm watching it on Tim's profile, and you've got viewers, and I've just loaded my profile, and there's viewers on that as well. So maybe that's why we've not had comments today.
Charlie Platt made a comment has just come through. I see that in your profile, Alex.
Yeah, I got on by your profile. Cool. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hi, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, and I think that, but that was an example of I mean, that was your prospect. I use the word prospect in the loosest term there, but that was your relationship, wasn't it, Tim? And you didn't have to close that. You know, the buyer was hungry to buy it because, as you said, they were
and that was because of the mode that they're in, which was the fact that they were in desperation mode. Because if they didn't get pipeline quick, they got fired.
But that was not a case of that was very much a soft close, wasn't it? You basically said, here's what we can do. This is what it's going to cost. And they said, yes, I'll have some of that, please. When can you start?
Yes.
So that was a very, very soft close. In fact, it wasn't even a close. They closed.
Yes.
You didn't have to say about, well, you know, if we don't start today, we can't start for 6 months. Or you didn't have to say we're about to have a price rise. Or you didn't have to say, you know, we can start on this date or this date. There was no... you just laid it out and they said, yes, please.
Yes, there was a clear, compelling reason.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's lovely, isn't it? Because the buyer was hungry to progress it. You answered their questions about when we can begin and what the process would look like and what the cost was. But there was no sense in the buyer's mind that they were being sold to at all. They were buying. Which was lovely for them and for us, in fairness. But you know, the other side of that is the kind of, and we've all seen it, where as you said, Alex, the seller is so focused on making their commission that you're going to buy this whether you want to or not.
Yeah, there's also certain products as well which are always closed on the first meeting. So, for example, if you go and buy a kitchen or certain curtains or bathrooms, the salesperson is expected to close on that first meeting. And if you don't buy, they will never follow it up because the assumption is that the second kitchen salesperson that you see will close it.
Really good point. Yeah.
But that's
and that isn't a commission thing. That is they know that it's a do or die situation, and there's as far as you know, their view is that you want a kitchen because you've filled in the ticket in the Sunday Times. You've called the salesperson in. You've basically gone through, and quite often they will map it all out. And you're over an hour or 2 hours. You will have designed the kitchen, and it's like, well, do you want to buy it or not?
Yeah, and this is where closing is part of the other activities within the sale. Like qualification, like discovery. These aren't one-hit activities where they often can be talked about from an enablement perspective.
And in software sales, I've worked in the environment where you would have 18-month sales cycles. When we moved to SaaS, we moved that down to 6 weeks. But when you're buying a kitchen or a bathroom, it is very much you've got all the information. Why can't you buy it now?
Mm.
And they're not after it's and quite often they're on very low basic. So you could say they're after the money because they need to eat and pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
But it's not like I've seen situations where people have walked away with a lot of money and selling something that probably doesn't work, whereas what they're selling from a bathroom or a kitchen perspective does work.
Yeah. You joked earlier, Adam, about the Kirby vacuum cleaners, but that listening to Tim, it does remind me of my Kirby vacuum cleaner days where I'd be in the customer's house trying to close the deal on the night, because if I didn't, it wouldn't get closed.
Yeah.
And
that is amazing, isn't it? Because there are products which are very much an impulse buy. So I remember, so I grew up in a household where we had an Encyclopedia Britannica on the bookshelves. And when I got married, I thought we need to get an Encyclopedia Britannica, not because the stuff isn't available on the internet, because it is, but because there's something really nice about leafing through the book and discovering other stuff when you're looking through the book.
Makes you look intelligent as well, Adam.
Well, I need all the help I can get. And so I did, like you said, Tim, I filled out one of those cards in the back of the, whatever it was, the Sunday Times or whatever, and I sent it off. And then we got a phone call from the Encyclopedia Britannica salesman, and they rocked up. And I don't know if you've ever been subject to that. I'm sure it is like the experience, which is sat down and said, right, the options are, yeah. And that's how you met, isn't it?
Yeah. Can you show the comment?
So the questions that I had for him are, how much extra is it to have it leather bound rather than vellum bound? And how much is it? That's all you don't need to do the presentation, because I'm sold on the idea of buying one of these. I just want to know how much it's going to cost and how we can pay for this.
Yeah. He didn't want to give you the price, did he?
No, but it wasn't even that they didn't want to give the price. It was that the sales presentation was so phenomenally compelling that, I was ready to buy, and yet I was ready to buy more after they've said, here's what it does. I know it does that. It's got all of these different, it's got this section at the front. I know it's got that section. I've got one. Look, it's there on the, and we've got this. And it was really interesting that they wouldn't deviate from the sales script. Now, we've all worked with salespeople that are like that, no matter what it is they're selling. But it was really interesting that sales process led inexorably to a point where you had a hunger to buy it, and they were going to close it there and then.
Yeah. Mine was hoovering the bed as a Kirby vacuum cleaner salesperson. That was oh my God, that's just come out of my bed. How much is it? Oh, it's 1,200 quid. Oh no, thank you.
Yeah, I was talking to a sales leader in the car industry, BMW actually, and he said that their sales process was really interesting, because their sales process was not to answer questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what they would do is that you'd come in and say, I've seen one on the forecourt, but I particularly wanted it in red. Can you get me one in red? He said, let's talk about that when we deal with the paperwork. And what happens is the whole of the sales process is to not answer your questions and basically get you to the paperwork, which is part of the closing process, obviously.
And do you see that as a hard close or just a process?
It's their sales process. And then I don't know if you've ever seen that. If you go onto YouTube, you'll see that there's basically salespeople have a quadrant which they basically get you into, because what they do is that they try and get you to talk about the payments per month rather than the other things. If you go onto YouTube, you'll see that there's plenty of people, ex-car salespeople, that say this is what we do, and what you need to do is you need to be talking about this in this quadrant rather than this quadrant. But I mean, that's just another way of closing, which is to not answer the questions and to get you through the process to ultimately to get you to talk about the payments and most people, when I say that, they go, yeah, that's what happened when I went to buy a particular car.
Yeah, interesting, because often you don't spot it when you're in the heat of the moment.
You don't. It wasn't until this sales leader in BMW told me, and I went, "Oh yeah, of course, that's how it
Yeah, yeah. Focusing on the afters. So Neil Johnson, thank you for the comment in my DMs. Using your initiative, if you can't comment on the on the actual live, but he makes an interesting point. The telephone demo scene in Wolf of Wall Street doesn't help the perception of closing.
No.
Maybe how not to do it. I do have that clip ready if anyone's interested.
Yeah, by all means, play it.
Although
sometimes the sound doesn't work on a.
Yeah, try not to talk while you're doing it, Alex, because it. Is this the one where he sits under the table?
Benchmark for future business, Kevin.
Do you feel comfortable with me,
hear it?
Scott?
And then you'll know for
Yeah.
sure that you finally found a broker on Wall Street that you can trust and who can consistently make you money. Sound fair enough?
No, yeah, I gotta say I'm pretty impressed. I don't know, what are you thinking?
Kevin, you give me one shot here on a blue chip stock like Kodak. And believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more. Sound fair enough?
Shit, my wife might divorce me, but yeah, let's do it. Oh, yeah.
Excellent choice, Kevin. How much you want to go for this time?
Let's do $5,000.
We try 8,000, Kevin.
All right, let's do 10.
10.
You want to do that?
Excellent choice. Kevin, let me lock in that trade right now and get back to you in a few minutes with an exact confirmation, Kevin. And welcome to Stratton Oakmont.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna have a beer. This is fun.
Take it easy, Kev.
Hey, thanks, Jordan. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Yeah, that said, it was quite entertaining to watch. And every salesman, they watch that and they go, yeah, that's really slick, isn't it? That's really slick.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could sense that the guy was buying something that he didn't want to buy. And he thought he did as a result of such a fantastic job was done on him.
Yeah. Now, was that the hard close or the enthusiastic close, or somewhere in between?
That's a good question, actually. That I feel that was the enthusiastic close.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a very compelling pitch, wasn't it?
It was. But think about the buyer for a moment and what they're experiencing today. When buyers are seeing films like this, no wonder they're scared to accept cold calls from sellers.
Yeah.
They don't feel like they're being able to use their rational thinking to make a decision that's right for them or their business. They feel like they're being put on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, the question that we were posing at the beginning was, is the soft or hard close better in the long run? Which one is more effective in the long run? And I can't help thinking that even with the brilliance of Leonardo DiCaprio closing that piece of business, the first sale is not representative of the lifetime customer value, is it? If you force the customer to buy something that they don't want to buy, you put them in a position where they feel uncomfortable and unable to articulate the fact that they're not happy with progressing down this line. It will become very difficult to get a second conversation with them. So
Yeah.
they'll buy it this time, but they certainly won't want to talk to you a second time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and so many buyers have had that experience when they feel like they've even made a decision that was right, that after the implementation of the solution, it's ended up not delivering the value that they expected.
And is that
buyer remorse?
Yeah.
Is that a mis-selling issue, or is that merely the fact that expectations haven't been met.
Only the salesperson knows. Or they've not, or the salesperson hasn't done a very good job at convincing the CSM team to bend and flex as much as they needed to deliver what the salesperson promised.
I think sometimes, we early days of running this company, we went and spoke to a very large company that sorts out if you've got rats and mice and wasps and stuff. And they told the story that they bought a tool from a company, and I can't mention them because we're transmitting over their social network. And they bought a particular tool off them, and this company came in and gave this amazing presentation about how it was going to completely transform all of their sales. And they switched it on a Monday, and nothing happened. Now, they actually said maybe we were a bit naive that we didn't think about actually training people. But the presentation they felt had come across as all you had to do was basically put this onto everybody's desktop, and your sales. Look at this company; they increased their sales by X, and this increased. So was that buyer naivety? Well, they were certainly having buyer's remorse. Maybe it was presented more of as the solution that was going to solve all problems. But there was certainly a disconnect between the buyer and the seller at that point.
Yeah, and I think that can happen because we're sort of focusing on delivering outcomes as the solution, not the product itself. But then I think it's the responsibility of the sales team to then help manage that situation. And I think all too often the sales team will say, "Hey, not my problem. I've done my bit. I've been paid." When actually, and this probably comes onto another topic around measurement, but
well, compensation is a different subject. I mean, that's a different day, isn't it? So
yeah. But anyway, back to sorry, you were going to say something, Adam.
No, I was just going to say, following on from that, I think that the part of the challenge here is that we all know what are the psychological drivers. Everybody wants something for nothing. Everybody wants a free gift. Free gifts, even if they're useless, are still a very compelling thing. And it's like this pest control company. If you buy this, it'll do all the work for you. Well, actually, we all want that, and that's why we see so many organizations that buy these marketing automation tools and cold outreach tools. This will deliver you a constant stream of leads. No, it won't, because actually the world and life doesn't work that way. There's no such thing as a free lunch. However, every one of us, when we get that email that says, I'm the lawyer working on behalf of Prince whatever, and we've got $19 million and we need your bank details to transfer it all to you, and there's only a small fee for doing that, all of us think to ourselves, I wonder. And there's that lovely meme, isn't there, about man in Nigeria dies with $150 million in his apartment that he's been trying to give away for the last 2 years. And the point is that we, all of us, hope that there's an easier path between here and there.
Yeah. You said something there, Adam, about marketing automation as the example, and I can't help but think that we're now in a position where these tools that were once bought to deliver an ROI are no longer delivering the ROI, yet the people using them are so tired of how clunky they are and outdated they are. They'll encourage a switch to a different platform because it's easier to use, and then they'll make sure they make up the story internally for the ROI in order to get the support from the people that influence the decision and can actually execute the contract signature and the implementation.
I've seen that as well. Adam and I were working with an organization where marketing said, "What's the Salesforce product for email marketing?" They'd already bought that. It didn't work. They weren't getting any response from email marketing, so they went out and bought Eloqua, which isn't £100 a month, and they still didn't get a response from email marketing.
Yeah, and
they left 3-6 months later.
Yeah. But the point here is that when and you know, sometimes it does turn into a let's bash marketing session, but the problem is when you have a lot invested in a particular belief system, you know, because actually email marketing hasn't always not worked. Once upon a time it did work. Once upon a time you changed from sending letters to sending emails, and it opened up an instant delivery to a global thing with a zero cost attached to it. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, this has opened the doors.
In the 90s when we started doing it, and everybody would respond.
Yeah, and for 10 or 15 years after that, it was the golden era of email marketing. And in those days, understanding open rates, understanding split testing, understanding headlines, understanding the power of images and personalizing those to individuals, understanding how to orchestrate a campaign through that, all of those things yielded a massive benefit. Because let's be honest, a 5% uplift in open rate, if you're sending 1 million emails and 20% of people are opening them, is a massive difference. If you're sending 1 million emails and 3 people are opening them, a 5% increase makes no difference at all. And the problem is that we've had this big shift, but people are still wedded to the old way of doing things, believing that there's some value in it. And I think that your point about changing to a more elegant interface that's less clunky and easier to use and more pleasurable to use, because to rock somebody's whole worldview, to say this way of doing things simply doesn't work. And it's like when we talk about cold calling, and we say cold calling is a complete waste of time. And what a lot of people that are very skillful at the telephone, at telephone sales here, is that telephone sales is dead. And it isn't. We never said that. You know, if you phone somebody up and the person is waiting for your call and wanting to speak to you, the telephone is far more powerful than a messaging exchange. Of course it is. In the same way that a face-to-face meeting is far more powerful than a telephone call. But actually, the point of the cold call is that if there is no credibility there, you just have words, and everybody has words, and you become like Leonardo DiCaprio in the clip you showed.
Yeah.
And the point is that actually you need to build the basis on which the words are listened to and believed. So cold calling is a complete waste of time, but telephone sales is incredibly powerful still, but you have to do the thing where the person is going to take your call and go, "Oh, Alex, it's really good to hear from you. Nice to meet at last." That's when it's at its most valuable. And I think a lot of people are scared that the 25, 50 years that they've spent developing their telephone selling technique is wasted when they hear cold calling doesn't work. And it isn't wasted. It's absolutely valuable.
Yeah. Agreed. Look, we've got 6 minutes or so left, and Neil Johnson's just made another comment I wanted to share with you. He thinks closing should be the most sophisticated part of the sales process, as when done with intellect and professionalism, it can cement the relationship. Training should focus on this and discovery as most important phases, in his opinion.
Is that I'm just doing some active listening on that, Alex. So in terms of discovery, that's about understanding what the business requirement is, and the issues, and where the buyer is in terms of their own thought process and what they get from it, and then using that through the sale to basically ultimately close against that. Is that what we're saying?
So there's a subtle thing in there. So yes, but it's also helping, in my view now, it's also helping the buyer understand problems and challenges they didn't know they had yet through a series of directional questioning to help them uncover that. And I think That is incredibly powerful, because when you can uncover that as a salesperson, you can start to identify additional areas of value that you can bring to the table and increase that value exchange that we started talking about at the beginning.
But is that closing? I would argue that isn't. I would argue that's part of the discovery and putting the proposal together.
But
You know,
this is the problem, Adam.
But
People think it isn't about closing, but it absolutely is, because if you haven't defined...
Oh, absolutely. But that's just good practice in that part. So, you know, I was with Tim talking to a client some time ago, and we explained what it was that we could do, and what were the problems that were solved, and what the rollout of that solution would look like. And the customer was really, or the prospect at that point, was really happy with all of that. And Tim simply said to them, "So what would you like to do?" And absolutely, so it wasn't a close, it wasn't anything hard. It was simply completely empowering the client or the prospect to say, "Yes, I'd like to go ahead," or "Actually, I need to go away and think about this." And because of that, the client said, "That's brilliant. How quickly can you start?" And it was absolutely because it wasn't a close per se. It was just drawing the conversation to its natural end and saying, "What would you like the next steps to be?"
Yeah.
Now, it would have been very easy to be brutal at that point and say, "So we can begin this next week," or, you know, whatever the close phrase was, or "I'll get a contract over to you and you can sign it." But actually, it was much more elegant than that, the solution. And because we've done those things that you'd said, you know, it had been, here's what we do, and listen to the client, and okay, I've got concerns about this. Okay, here's how. So all of that had been done, but that point of close was just unclose-like and very, very charming as a result of that.
And this is where I think, and Neil's just raised the point that I'm going to mention. You know, you are closing during discovery as you are differentiating. So as you're walking through the corridor of, you know, the virtual corridor of the purchase process, you know, there's hundreds of doors that are open, and I visualize this as, you know, it being the salesperson's job to hold the hand of the buyer and walk down that corridor, closing those doors. So there'll be lots of mini closes that need to happen in order to move the conversation forward in the direction that will end up in a, you know, a positive commercial outcome for both buyer and seller.
Well, I think that even the way you cage that is a really good way of saying it. A positive commercial outcome for buyer and seller.
Yeah.
And I think that so often the hard close, it's about the seller, not about the buyer, isn't it? It's about transacting a deal now. You know, I'm going to make you buy this whether you want to or not, almost.
And the second the salesperson gives off that impression, that's the second that they're injecting risk into the deal, using the deal, because it's about them and not the buyer.
Yeah.
Neil's just thanking us for being his voice.
Thank you, Neil.
Great conversation.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that we don't seem to have had the comments coming through. So we've had a couple, but it's
not transmitting on my profile. If I look at it, my profile.
Right. So obviously we're full of glitches today, which is unfortunate. But
well, if we've got the same problem, the problem is the platform, isn't it? LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So there we are. I can't help feeling that there's more conversation to be had around this. Maybe when the comments are working properly in future.
Yes.
For everybody in the audience, and I can see Jackie and Charlie, and I know Neil because of the comments that he's been making through Alex. So thank you all, and everybody else in the audience. Because when I look at the profiles, I can see we've got quite a few viewers, just unfortunately not able to comment. So I hope this has been entertaining for everybody, and thank you all very much for joining. And we hope to see you again later today, or failing that next week.
Yeah.
So have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.